Okay.
So I would like to thank David and Bill. We are meeting on regular Industry 5.0 talk, discussing a lot of topics, and we consider to record it and share it. So we don't know what will come, and you don't know what will come. So let's wait. And if you don't like it, you will not see it. Okay, so last time we have discussed, even with David, quite a lot of interesting topics related to thinking of people, to getting back to the nature and so on. So I think we can continue in this topic. And I like generally your description of your morning routine, in which you say that you are generally recharging yourself every morning in the nature.
It's yeah, some people call it getting back to nature, but I think I don't like that. It sounds too prosaic. It sounds too much like it doesn't describe it well enough. What describes it is every morning is different, and on this walk, the clouds are different, the waves are different. Every day is different. Some days I will walk the length of the beach and back again, which is about 1.5 miles. And before I walk back up the stairs, I'll realize that I did not hear the waves. I was down there for 45 minutes and did not hear the waves, probably because there was too much noise going on in my head. And usually I'll just turn around and walk it again, and this time I'll listen to the waves. But it's so necessary for me to do this and to appreciate how different every day is.
What for me is interesting, that generally David has a very similar morning routine, and this spa, we have to say it. So David is the youngest one of us, and it's generally another generation. And what is interesting, but he does the same. Why do you do that, David?
Well, I think it's a combination of a lot of things, because sometimes you wake up in the morning and maybe you don't feel like, the normal thing, but then things need to happen. I mean, you still have to take care of family, you have to work, you have to get yourself, in the right state, right? And I think of late, we've been having a lot of discussions about mental health, and it doesn't happen just one day. It's accumulated stuff, and things happen during the weekend. Yeah. So honestly, when I was in China, it was more about riding. I used to ride a lot. Ride with my wife. We just take the bike and then just go. Right? We don't have any routine. We just go having conversation when we're tired. We just take a break and do that. But here, it's very hilly, and you cannot adapt to riding. It depends on where you are. So I adapt to walking. I'm a very morning person, so like 4:35, I'm awake, do my prayers and meditation and go through my emails quickly, and then just jump outside with my earphones, listen to podcasts, and then just walk about an hour and 30 minutes and just come back. It's really good for me because it prepares me for the day. I already have my to-do list, so I already plan how I'm going to send emails. I already plan how I'm going to have discussions and meetings and even proposals or whatever thing I have to do for the day. And my wife is not very much of a morning person, so when I get back, she also has a park here. We sit there, have a conversation for about 30 minutes or so, and then we kick off our day since we both work remotely. And that's it for me. I see that it helps me. Sometimes going around the morning and seeing other people walking and also, very happy, saying good morning, and it excites you a little bit, and it gets you to see nature. And in the morning there are not a lot of cars, but when I'm coming back, I see that the morning rush, people are getting to work, and there are a lot of noise with the cars and other things. But it's exciting to see that some people are happy, and other people who like run. And the exciting thing about this is, what encourages me a lot is when I see very old people in their 70s and 80s, trust me, walking together, couples holding their hands in their, walking attires and their, sneakers, looking so smart and walking and chatting, it's so exciting. And look at yourself and you're like, you are still in bed at 7 a.m. Oh, come on. You're missing the sunrise and the beautiful sky. Yeah, it's really exciting to do that.
I just have to add one information. Bill is sitting in the US. David is in Costa Rica at the moment. I am speaking from Czech Republic. So what is interesting, because making the bridge to our previous conversation, when we talk about the topic, whether the people should be paid generally for thinking, for doing nothing for some time to relax. Do you think that similar routine, because I know factories in China, in Asia, Korea, and so on, Japan, they do morning exercises frequently. But I don't think this is what you are describing. It's generally already cutting down the working time generally by doing exercise with somebody else is requesting. Like, I work for a Japanese company, and we must do, the first thing which we do in the morning when we go to the factory was 5S. So to walk through the factory and 5S every morning before we switch the computer on, anything else. But it was, after 1 week, it was not efficient anymore. It was a routine, and we generally did not see anything. We just walk there, and the workers work. So I think, and Bill described it well, the nature is every moment different. There will be no second time the same. The sky will be different, the waves will be different, and you say you will meet other people. And I think this is what make it. I don't know how to implement this in a factory or in a business, but I think it should be there.
So as you are talking, Michael, my wife, who designs software, is in the next room. She has been in a meeting with the CEO, and it's an all hands meeting since 8:30 this morning. So that's almost 2 hours without a break. So your question is, how do we implement this? And I think it needs to come from leaders, or it needs to be the workers saying, excuse me, I'm going to take a 10-minute break and do some jumping jacks or whatever. And if the next person at the next workstation says, I'm going to join you, and the next person says, I'm going to join you, at some point the leader will say, oh, well, the parade is passing me by, I must go get in front of the parade, right? So either it can come from the workers or it can come from the leader, but it must come. And if it does not come, we become robots.
Unfortunately, this is one of the direction which the so-called leaders prefer. The robot is easy to manipulate, is easy to work with. I don't know whether you have seen recently, generally, it started, I think, last year in Japanese offices, and some of them, the people have not only chairs, but they can put the chair and lie under the bed, under the table. So they make a rest during the day. But I don't think that generally it reminds me, when I was a really small child, we have not only kindergarten, but we have something before kindergarten. And even in the kindergarten, we have to sleep after the lunch. We sleep for 1 hour or so. Small beds, 1 meter long. If you look at it from this perspective, it's fun. But already there was the sleep important part. But again, I think it's still the routine. So even the childs are somehow being pushed into the routine. If you go to school, you sit straight and you should not ask and whatever. That's wrong, completely wrong. So, and unfortunately, then the leaders came from this environment.
Yeah. I think I'll just quickly pick up from where what Bill was talking about, because the working environment doesn't really allow us to have that liberty to add these kind of activities to our lives. And this is something interesting that I saw in the Asian culture, because I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but in every institution, typical institution in China, Right after lunch, they sleep for an hour.
I love that idea.
The police, the hospital, the doctors, the managers, everyone. And you should just see pictures that I took in different offices that I worked in, and how, the office turns to, I don't know, like a camp all of a sudden right after lunch. These guys eat really quickly. In 30 minutes, they are done, and they have a whole hour or 45 minutes to sleep, right? And then at 1 o'clock, everyone is just up and work kicks off. And trust me, if you go to the police station, no matter what you have, of course, there might be someone on standby, but most governmental institutions and companies, you have to wait until 1 before you be attended to. And that was very interesting. But on the other side, I don't know if you guys have heard about this. We were watching a documentary recently about how the youth are getting tired of the working environment. I think we started talking about this in our conversation the other day. But this is a new thing that has come. They call it 996, where they work from 9 to 9, 6 days in a week. And so there's a new trend called lying flat that, some people, the youth have come up with this new thing. They just lie flat. And the whole idea is they limit everything. They practically don't do anything. They just lie flat, maybe just watch videos, play games, and have 1 or 2 jobs at different locations. And when they get the money, they just continue the week lying flat. It doesn't look like a realistic life, but I'm thinking of how the pressure of life has gotten people to adapt certain things like this. It's not something that could take them forever, but even in other countries like Taiwan, we learned that they are also adapting this, but at a different rate and a different way. It's affecting marriages, it's affecting childbirth, it's affecting how efficient even normal workers do, because they are like, okay, you give me the task, I just do the task, nothing else, right? That's another version of lying flat. Another one is we just get married, we do not think about kids, we are just going to work, get the money 50-50, we just survive. That's it. Another level is different things. People are adapting all these things. And I think the root of it is that we are not getting enough rest for ourselves. How can you work from 9 to 9, 6 days in a week? And Sunday is literally working because, I don't know, you have to do something else. So I totally agree with it, with Bill. It has to start from the employees. It has to start from workers. We also have to speak up. But sometimes it looks like they don't have lots of say because, I mean, that's the system. If you don't do it, if you stop the job, someone will quickly get there. The competition is tight. So probably it could be a collective societal issue because this is something important. A lot of people are just going crazy because it's too much work. You spend majority of your life at work.
You, Bill.
One of my next books is about the Industrial Revolution in the early 1800s. And it started with the British Industrial Revolution, and people were working 70 and 80 hours a week, no half-day Saturdays, work on Sunday as well. And the life expectancy was in the 30s. So you grew up, went to the factory or the mines before you were a teenager, got married, had kids, and died, and that's what you did. And when they imported the Industrial Revolution to the U.S. in the 1815 or 1820, they made a conscious decision to do it differently, and they used farm girls, and they would come and work for generally about 3 years, and they lived in houses with other farm girls, and every house had a house mother who insisted on the morality and insisted that everybody goes to church on Sundays. They only worked half days on Saturdays and had all of Sundays off. And the managers of the mills brought in speakers, some politicians, some writers, to speak to the girls in a big amphitheater. And so the morality of the workers and the health of the workers was very, very high. That lasted maybe 20 years before the competition, and they started cutting back on some of the perks and the pay, and the immigrants came in and took over the jobs. But there was a 20-year period there where they tried to make it good for the workers, and the production was very, very high. And many of the girls, even though they were working 60 and 70 hours a week, spoke very, very highly, because they came from the farms where you didn't get Sundays off, and you worked from sun up to sundown. And so we can learn a lot from the past, I think. And this comparison between the way that the British did their industrial revolution and the way that the Americans started their industrial revolution is fascinating. And what you were saying, David, matches 200 years ago. This is not a new thing. We say, oh, look how busy we all are. Look at the automation. Look at the jobs that are being lost, and so on. None of this is new. None of this is new. So I just throw that out for your consideration.
I just generally I spent all my time in factories, so different types of factories and so on. But it was let's call it a process or manufacturing environment or logistics. And then about 12 years ago, I went into, we call it new businesses. It was e-trader, generally who grows to the largest one. And their offices, I enter it, it was like a playground. And they have a table tennis there and coffee and whatever. On the other hand, and we ride there on electric unicycles because we implement it in their offer and so on. So generally with the CEO, with the founder, it was quite interesting. Really no such silos and barriers between the people. On the other hand, the people there work really long during the day and really hard. It was not like 8 hours I start and end and I don't care. No, they give me a call in the midnight and so on. So it was quite interesting to see how, I will say unintentionally, because everybody there was young. So just after school or with very few experience from the work. But they really appreciate, they like the work they can do, they can grow up in the work and so on. So it was quite interesting. So they did it intentionally. But I do remind myself, when I was 20 and I started with Schenker, a logistic company, it was so interesting for me. I have to ride by train 1 hour home. So it was one trip. And I stay at the office. I slept there. There was a couch, I slept there because it was so interesting. And there I have a first breakdown with 21. The doctor said you must be 40. So it is really, we have to balance very carefully. And the issue is that the people without experience, they don't know how the balance look like. This is why I think we have to go even step back to the education, and even if new employee came, to follow old habits. It's one of the worst things, generally. I advise all the time, be careful, don't do it, because that you did the job same for 30 years doesn't mean that it cannot be done different. But it's difficult to change, and there must play real leaders the role. Unfortunately, the people do not listen to the workers, or very few do.
Yeah, I actually do have a question, and I would like to hear your thoughts on that in relation to what we're saying. So I remember about 2 or 3 weeks ago, we had a conversation, and Bill was talking about his wife was sort of encouraging him, I mean, all these years to do something that he's very passionate about, or something that he feels very close to his heart. And, you know, going through that journey of finding that thing could take a whole lifetime. We also mentioned something about our education system, where are we really training people to have that kind of mindset to thrive for something that they really want to do or they are passionate about. because I think passion really drives these kind of things, and you do it easily, let's say, even when you have these challenges. And you can also make time to rest when you're doing something that you're very passionate about. But now I look at talents, education system, the economic system, and everything that is surrounding these kind of in this industrial era. I want to ask you guys that do you think that we are preparing ourselves enough for this, or is the system encouraging enough for people to portray this? Let me give one example that maybe you have a kid and the kid is in early 20s, wants to pursue probably art. You don't just get up and start the art. You have the skills, you have everything, you've been to school, you can draw and everything. But for people to get access to your art, or people to even be willing to pay for the products that you make, you probably have to convince them enough. So there comes maybe starting a company, building a website, getting a marketing team, going online, all that process that it takes. And even that is an assurance that you're going to get clients, right? So at the end, because of the economic standard, for you to even get money on your table to feed your family and other people, it becomes like very difficult. So to pursue something that you're passionate about, it demands all these structures or all these bureaucracy or all this procedure to go through before you can be able to be successful as society claims. So that doesn't give a lot of encouragement at all for the youth to really dive into things like that. Okay, why don't I just maybe pursue this when I'm like in my 50s and then just find a white collar job or any job in any office, or maybe work at a club or somewhere here to get some money per hour to feed my family. Meanwhile, parents want you to also get married and get a car and all the societal stuff. I know I've mentioned so many things, but it's something that I don't know, whilst we were talking, was just on my mind that the system doesn't give us enough opportunity. We were talking about industry, but I think it's more about the system and the community, right? It doesn't give us this kind of opportunity. But Bill, using your example, what do you think about this, and how can young people or even anyone thrive through this process, thinking about their health and their well-being and everything?
Fascinating, fascinating question, David. From my experience, uh, um, and the reason what my wife told me before about finding joy, it shocked me so much, because for 50 some years, I have worked for everything that I worked to buy a tent for Boy Scouts if I wanted to go on the camp out. So everything and if I wanted a sleeping bag, well, that means I had to shovel the walk, shovel the snow off the walk, or I had to mow the grass, or I had to do something. And this is when I was 11 years old. And I studied hard so that I could get to a good university. I did well in the university so I could get a good job. I got married and started having kids. So the question had never been in my life, what brings you joy? That was not even on the radar screen. What was on the radar screen was, I have to put shoes on the kids' feet and food on the table. And for decades, and so I had programmed myself, or the system had programmed me, or a combination of both of them. So I think in this case, I don't think there's a right or wrong. I think that the path I was on was probably leading to an early grave. But in the end, you says, so what makes success? And you that's your word, David. And that's a word that I have trouble with, because how do you define success? So for years, for me, success was defined by the kids' success, or by the size of the car, or the size of the house, or what clubs you belong to, and so on. And to a lot of people, that's what success today is defined as. And so how do you change in your own mind? How do you change that? And that's an individual thing. And it's a challenge, because we do well at work and we get promotions, we get more money and so on, but are we happy? And oftentimes we're too busy with our to-do list and the things that must be done today to even ask ourselves that question, or to have a conversation like we're having right now with other people, because oftentimes it's difficult to step out of your own mind to have that conversation. You need somebody to challenge you and say, is that really what you mean? What's your definition of that? And so on. So that's, to me, that's one of the values of this sort of conversation, or this sort of group, is to challenge your assumptions. Michael had said that he likes to look under the rug, and to my clients, we have whole complete ideation sessions where we challenge our assumptions, and it's easy to listen to business people when they talk about, well, we don't market over there, or our product looks like this, or all these assumptions. And so when I'm introduced to people in companies and they say, this is Joe, he's been here for 35 years. And I'm supposed to, what the system wants me to do is to shake his hand and congratulate him on something. But in fact, what he's done is, Joe in 35 years is in the same building, maybe even sitting at the same desk. He's thinking the same thoughts, and he's treating other people the same way. So why should I congratulate somebody on being so locked in their box like that? David, have you ever had anybody explain to you how to train a flea? We'll save that for another day. Or the story about the monkeys in a room, and there's bananas hanging from the ceiling. You're both nodding on that one. So we'll do the flea one next time. But the thing about the flea is once you do it with a glass jar, and if the jar is no longer there, they still will behave as if there's a border all around them, right? That's the way we train people. That's the way the education system is. That's the way work is, and so on. So somehow we need to wake up to get outside of the way we've always done things. So I didn't answer your question. It's not a yes or no question. I think it's very personal, but I think that work and the education system and our society in general should do more to promote independent thinking and asking questions. That's my answer.
For me, generally, it's exactly as both of you says. I call it meaningfulness. But I did not came with this word before. I generally watched the Carl Gustav Jung video from 1959. And he said at the very last sentence of this video is, the man cannot live meaningless life. He can or she can survive this life, but it's not the real life. So I think that generally, what it reminds me on gurus. So you are guru and you came somewhere and you wake up the people. But this is done mainly, and not only, but mainly in a spiritual way. So somehow connected to religion or whatever. But I think that, for example, visit the students by people who really change the direction. They wake up, simply they wake up. It is very important. So we speak here about the young, but generally it's not about the age. It's everyone should have this opportunity. No one should live as Bill described at the beginning, born, work, die. But we do the same. Just we change the style we are working. We do not die with 30 because we are working with computer and our body is not so damaged. But generally it's the same. We hunt the money. Today is United Nations conference again in New York. Everybody came, they call young girls from all around the world to speak there to people who will not listen to them. They will not listen. They just have a great PR because these people, Greta is not in anymore, so they invited another girls. And it's really the very opposite is being done. The people came from a small village in India. They learn how does it greatly look when you sit here in a chair inside United Nations and you get money and you get everything free there. And what do you think, which mind they will come back? They will not come back with a meaningfulness. They will be told, please go and share and strike and everything. Yeah, because it's wasting more time, which is money for the people who generally pay their trip. So it is very important to be part of the family, to be part of the education. And what I like truly is generally that many countries in Asia still get these roots, but South America as well. I just have a few days before a conference where there was a man from Colombia, and we spoke about getting back to the roots. And this is exactly this 20 years as you described. Yes, we just have a different tools. We just have the computer instead of whatever, and why not to use it, but not to misuse it? That's the difference, I think. But so for me, it's the meaningfulness, and I think it can be educated, at least shown, to wake the people up. But the question is, we do not want to do it. Because instead of robots, we will have a people who will think and have a free mind. And that's very dangerous for some people, but not for the planet and society.
In America recently, we've been talking, the politics has gotten really bad, and it has in other countries as well. In trying to explain why people will give their loyalty to leaders who are clearly insane. They use the explanation of joining a tribe. Are you familiar with the word tribe?
Yeah.
Okay. And it is a defense mechanism. It is easier for us to accept the rules and the behavior of a tribe, then you don't have to think about it yourself. And the world is very, very complicated, and the number of inputs that we have, data points floating around us all the time that we have to make sense of. And it's much easier to say, I'm not going to make those decisions. I'm going to simply identify with this tribe. And so it's sometimes I wonder whether or not this way of thinking is thrust on people or taught to people by the education system, or whether or not we choose this. And I'm caught in between. I don't know what the answer to that is. Do people choose not to think, or are they taught not to think? What do you guys think?
Well, I think it's sort of both ways. Like I mentioned earlier, that I think the society actually contributes certainly towards this. So in a typical Ghanaian culture where I come from, we say that charity begins from home. So which literally means that you are thought about the culture, you're thought about how to respect, you're thought about how to, do everything right at home before you go to school. And that was in the olden setting. But now it has sort of changed where we have the modern parents who are the internet parents, right? And they don't teach these kids values. So in a very typical Ghanaian culture, if you're walking past a building and there's an old person or an elderly person sitting in front of the house, you cannot just pass by. You have to say good afternoon by sort of bowing a little bit. If you're wearing a hat, you have to take it off. But the modern kids do not know these kind of things. They just pass by. And if you're locked and you come back and you see this old man and say that, oh, hi, good morning, I'm just going here, ABC, but I cannot find my way. He was like, when you were passing, you saw a tree here, right? He'll refer you to the previous stage where you didn't say hi. So I'm saying this to say that, I mean, in this particular culture I'm talking about, these things have to be taught by parents, I mean, and elderly people who are around. But in this modern society, what is teaching us is social media and the internet. Because as soon as you as a parent teaching your kids that A, B, C, D, right? This is what you do have to do. I saw a very funny video on online about a father, a Chinese father, who was teaching his daughters how to sort of sit down when they're in public wearing dresses. And he took a whole skirt as a father and he was showing them how to, sit down. And, sometimes if your legs are apart or something, you put your clothes together, you put your legs across and other things. That's a very interesting thing to do. But now we have, as soon as your kid has phone, is open to all these kind of information, and they are learning all these things from the internet, and there is no limits to that. They can go as far as even things that parents might not be even exposed to. So now, honestly, I think that it's going both ways. But in the initial one, which was supposed to be elderly people or experienced people, teachers, teaching us what to do, we have the society and social media, which is a very wide community with no boundaries, teaching us, so many things. So it's mostly that kind of way, honestly, in this current situation, that especially when it comes to the pressure with, what to do with your life and those kind of things. Honestly, I think the standards of community is what is happening. Like I told you guys the other day about the difference I see in different communities I have lived in. Here, there is a lot of pressure on you. Though the standard of living is very high and things are expensive, parents are expecting you to get a good job. They're expecting you to get a good car. They're expecting you to get a good house. They're expecting you to have this title which they can boast of, right? And not necessarily on what they were able to achieve, or even basic things like, I don't call my dad every day to help me with what to eat. Isn't that enough achievement? Like, I'm happy with my wife and my kids. Isn't that enough achievement? But then the society pressures you to do this. If you're having a conversation with a friend, oh yeah, I think I just want to do it in a very simple way. I don't want to do this. No, 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 no. This is the thing of the day. You have to do this and put pictures on Instagram, blah, blah, blah. So back again, it's community. We are not necessarily taught these things, but it's pressure from the community, social media, and all that.
I do agree with all of that, but I think, Bill, that the answer is that more share is the push and the generally the intention to let people forget. We mentioned last time, so before internet, I simplified, there was a God who has all the answers, who knows every time what to do, and it's just enough to go for him on a Sunday and he will give you the way. Right now you have internet. You have it in your hands, and generally it behaves exactly the same. So who created internet and why? Was it because it's so easy to influence the people and do from them what is needed? You see the example in Russia, the TV does not put the reality. It's just the war TV, which says it's not us, it's the evil is there behind the border. And everybody believes, not everyone, of course, but a lot of people, because it's easy. We get used to easy way to do things. And this is, of course, difficult to get over, because if easy, everybody can do. Why the kick scooters are such a big problem? Because everybody can ride kick scooter, but the electric kick scooter can behave very strangely if you never ride it. So it's so fast and so on. So I predicted the issue with the kick scooters before they even came because of using my electric unicycle, which is not easy to learn to ride. And with every single ride, it will be first me who will crash, not the machine. So this is generally at a different. So I think that really the connection has to be re-established. It's lost. But it's not the connection on a social media in a digital form, which is pushed, but really meeting the people. Of course, it can be online. We have to use the tools. So right now we can meet. We are on 3 continents and still we can meet. It's fine. But it will not be the Zoom who will say when and whom I will meet. And unfortunately, this happened. So my answer is it's more pushing us. And we are not in a, how you use the word tribe. What I think, what it is, it's a stream. And we just step in the stream and swim with the stream. And look how few people swim against the stream, because it's really, really difficult.
Well, it's interesting the thing you mentioned about this stream thing and the word you use about how the system has made it easy. But making it easy doesn't necessarily mean it has made it more effective. And I think that's something that we have to also think about. And I think earlier Bill made mention about, and so are we being taught these things, or is it coming from another way? But my dad tells me the story about how he went through his master's degree, and it's very interesting for me because he made mention that at those days there was no internet. So if you want a particular book, you have to go to the library. And there is the same guy in your class who has actually located this book, maybe in the history shelf. So since he wants to be the only one reading this book and having access to it every time, he takes it from the history shelf and go and put it in economics. Who will be looking for a history book in economics shelf, right? So he's the only one who literally has access to it, unless you are friends with him. And in this stage, he was like, so how do you go by your master's degree and everything? I was like, yeah, that we did the lab experiments, blah, blah, blah. And the rest is, you sit behind a computer and work it out. And he was like, then I'm expecting a way better results from you because you didn't have to travel miles. You didn't have to go further. You didn't have to go strive to find books and reading hard copy books, right? And you know how easy for us. Now we have PDFs. You can even just type keywords and not necessarily read the whole book, but you can reference a book without reading, like just get a portion where you just want to read, and then that's it. How many people are used to the habit of reading books to improve their ideas, to expand their scope and other things? So the issue here, again, I just want to buttress that. Has the system really made us more effective by making it easy, or we have rather become lazy and not striving to go against the stream to find maybe points where we think these are strongholds? We just go with it because that's how the system is. And that's something interesting to think about, I think.
I just yesterday, I don't know how many minutes we have, probably 6 or so. Just yesterday, there was a published in the Guardian an article that the European Union wastes more food than it imports.
I saw that.
It was not my article. There was a created organization 2 years ago which started big data. And so it doesn't matter. That's the reality. And what was interesting, there was one commentee and who said, wow, so it is the time that the West learn from India, because we never forget what is the value of food. And that's exactly the point where it's not just the teacher who should teach. When COVID hit, everybody was expected to learn online from one day to another. For the kids, it was easy. But the teachers never learned to teach online, never. But nobody asked the kids to help them. And so was the result. So I don't know how in your countries, but in my country, the result is horrible. So generally like 2 years lost because the education was just a fraction of the of the normal education. So that's just what I would like to say.
Actually, I wanted to end this with asking Michael more about how this is related to wasting. And I think you just dived into that a little bit more. And it's interesting how, I mean, I think we'll classify, what would you classify this under, Michael? This sort of waste in terms of our lives and
Generally, for me, it is the process waste
yeah,
and the social waste. So these both are together, but they influence the other two. So because if you, all these ways are connected, and you remember 2 days ago, Svein, which is our ambassador in Norway, he put very interesting, and Bill, I would like you to think about. He asked, shouldn't we put time as the fifth waste? Because wasting of time is so omnipresent that we do not realize that we are wasting the time, like the meetings you mentioned and so on. That's exactly the point. But the question is if there should be 5 waste categories, because then we can add fear and many others. So I'm still not sure, but it is very important because of this omnipresence of time and the omnipresence of wasting of time. Usually, look at it, we love to waste other people's time. Let them wait, come late, whatever, and hate if somebody do it through us at the same time. So I think that this was great conversation.
Yeah. My takeaway shortly will be that, I mean, if you're someone listening to this conversation, for me, this is a daily thought. This is a daily thing that I think about on how to maximize, what we mentioned earlier, what we term as success. We have to define it for ourselves and make sure that in as much as whatever we do, we find that kind of happiness in it. It's not necessarily the longer time or how busy you are, as society talks about, that means you are successful or how much money that you have, but really think deep about yourself and into your life and everyday thing that you do. Are you really happy or joyful? And do you do these kind of things just because of, societal pressure or for the money or other things? Do you get time to spend with your family? Do you even have people that you call family? When was the last time you called your parents? And if you have children, you spend time with your wife. These are things that are very important in life than the things that we spend almost 8 to 10 hours doing each and every day.
That is the definite, to me, that is the definition of Michael's wasteless world. And that's why I think that time should be listed as the 5th area of waste, because it's all the same. The way that I look at scrap on the shop floor, or the way that I look at urban waste, whatever, the way that I process that and the way that I think about alternatives to that is the same, whether it is the shop waste on the shop floor, scrap on the shop floor, or whether or not it is time. And so we're not being fair to ourselves to not explore that dimension. We're not being true to our concept of a wasteless world if we don't explore that further.
Thank you, both of you. I would like to wish you and all the listeners, I hope there will be many and society will be growing. Have a nice time, free of waste and wasting in all its forms. Stay safe and free, and let us meet in wasteless world and follow one and only aim, to build this world for us and for the children.
Thank you.